Welcome to the Level Up Your Band podcast, episode 81. Hello and welcome back to the Level Up Your Band podcast. My name is Gavin Patterson and I'm here with Julian Pombo.
No splint today.
No splint?
Because I feel pretty good. Oh yeah! Look at this! Look at this!
Don't!
Ow. Owie, I heard it again. No, it's fine. It's actually okay. I found that I can do this fine, and I can even do that.
So you can wave both ways.
I can do this at the club now.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the episode that we promised you. I can't remember what the episode was before that we did. There was a two-parter, wasn't it?
Two-parter, and then the one part. I don't know. Two one-part. What did we do?
One of them was like a recap, but we did one where we were talking about like maintaining your artistic integrity.
Yes,
and
I just edited that yesterday.
Right.
Yeah. So that's episode 78.
Yeah,
or
and
9.
I think I mentioned Weezer in that episode.
Yeah. And here it is.
We also talked about a bunch of other bands like Dream Theater to an extent, but they were forced to, which is different. They were kind of forced on by their over.
Yeah. The episode I just edited, which is coming out on the 25th of August, was about what to do when no one is listening. It was like identifying.
That's right. That's the one.
What if things aren't going so well, like why is it? Is it because have you strayed too far from your original artistic vision, or has your social media guy went on holiday and forgot to post on? Yeah.
Right.
Check out that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today it's another sort of rise and fall episode, although I mean, a lot of these bands that we talk about are still gigging loads and still making loads of money, so they've not necessarily fallen in that respect. But anyway, today we're talking about Weezer, which is I just gave Gavin a bit of a crash course.
Yeah.
Listen to Weezer. What did you think of early Weezer then compared to like the later stuff that I showed you?
So the thing I noticed when you played the early stuff, right off the bat, the music before the singing comes in, the music is. So I've never heard. I've heard of Weezer. I know like one song. You played me that first song. I was like, I recognize
song.
I recognize this.
It's the best song.
But when you first hear the music, like minus vocals, like just the instruments, it doesn't sound like anything. It sounds like it's unique. The instruments, the way they're recorded and mixed, they're not conventional guitar tones. They're not conventional drum tones. Like the first tune you showed me, it sounded like the electric guitar was just clean, flat DI. It wasn't even through an amp.
Well, it was one of them, yeah. Like, say it ain't so, like, the guitar is just DI'd. There's, like, 2 DI guitars.
That's quite unconventional.
Yeah.
And some of the notes they were using in the chords sounded like kind of like, whoa, that's cool. And then the singing comes in and it's unique melodies. It's cool sounding.
Yeah.
It's different sounding, and you can tell what it is.
Yeah.
The newer stuff, you played a newer song, I don't know what it was.
I played a couple. Hash Pipe and Crab.
It just sounded like everything else. It just sounded generic, boring. To me, all the instruments sound like, well-mixed instruments. The chords weren't particularly interesting.
Right.
Couple of interesting rhythms. There was that last one you showed me. Like it was like, it's a decent enough riff, but still kind of boring. That was my sort of, I don't know. I've never heard of them. I've never heard like their music. So like on first listen, it sounded like the original material sounded more
like,
inventive and more
like the really early stuff is and then it just sort of becomes a little bit more, I guess PC.
Yeah,
it's like PC music.
It's a little bit like non-offensive.
Yeah, which is one of my I hate music like that. That just is just
a friend of mine just released an EP, recorded it in here, and he's been releasing music for the last 10 years. I mean, not on a big scale, just a local guy. And all the stuff he's released up until this point has been acoustic singer-songwriter genre, right? Just so your generic kind of thing.
Acoustic guitar voice and
it's fine. But he came in and he was like, I don't want to sound like that anymore. I want to try something a bit more out there. So he came up with this idea of just having a drum beat and singing over the top of the drum beat. And it's just like a kick and a snare thing. So it's just a kick and a snare and then singing over the top of it. So no chords. And it's totally different from what he's done before. And
I remember listening to it. I think the thing that amazed me the most was that he was perfectly
in tune.
In like C sharp.
Yeah.
Just like...
What was even more baffling was the warm-up uptake he did was in C natural. And then we hit record and he modulated up a semitone to C sharp. And I didn't notice because there was no chords. And then in mixing, I was like, I'm going to put some big, meaty piano and some weird effects and reverb effects and stuff on top of this. And found that he was singing exactly in tune, which was quite kind of eerie. But when he's released this EP, and the first reaction people got were like, oh wow, I was not expecting this. And it's got an overwhelmingly positive reaction because it's so different.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, that's, at the end of the day, people want to be, I think people are happy to hear the same thing over and over again too, but I think people are really interested in listening to something that is a little different. To be fair, like Weezer at the end of the day is just it's a rock band, right? Yeah. And even their early stuff, it's just kind of like 1994 like college rock music.
Yep.
But it's good college rock music because they're doing something interesting with it. Cool. So we're just I'll just jump in. Just so if you don't know who Weezer are, Weezer's a band that was formed in Santa Monica, California, around 1992. Frontman is a man called Rivers Cuomo. Plays guitar and vocals, and I can't remember the name of because I didn't write it down because I'm dumb. So I'm just going to look it up very quickly just now.
The name of who?
The name of the current bass player, because they've gone through like 3 different bass players.
All right.
Let's have a look here. I don't know why I didn't make a note of that. That was silly. Yes. Right. So their current bass player is a guy called Scott Schreiner. But their first iteration of Weezer, their bass player was Matt Sharp, and then after that they got in another bass player called Mikey Welsh, but we'll be talking about all of that later. So I don't know why I didn't make a note of that. That was stupid. Anyway, right. So Rivers Cuomo on guitar and vocals, Matt Sharp on bass and mostly falsetto vocals. Over the whole thing, which is kind of fun actually. I kind of enjoy it. Patrick Wilson, drums, and the band started off with Jason Cropper, a guy called Jason Cropper on guitar, but then he was later replaced by a guy called Brian Bell, who is also does some backing vocals and I think sings a couple of the songs as well. So, so they got together, they started recording this Blue album. At which point he then dropped this guy, Jason Cropper, because he was a little bit neurotic at the time. Okay. Had lots of stuff going on in his personal life, and Rivers was like, hey, we need to have a chat. I don't think you're I don't think you should be in the band right now because the band's going through a bunch of things and you're in danger of jeopardizing it. And it was all, from the way I understand it, done was pretty civil. Everybody kind of understood each other, and it was all fine.
What age were they, roughly? Were they like college age? Like, was this as a college band thing?
Yeah, sort of like 20, 21, I think.
Okay.
Like, they're all in their 50s now.
Okay, and that was 1994.
94.
That's 2004, 2014. 20, yeah.
20-ish, yeah.
Yeah. So was that 26 years ago or something? 20, what we are? We're 2021 now. Yeah, 27 years. Yeah, is that right? Jeez, oh.
Yeah.
27 years.
27 years.
I think 2014 was like 5 years ago, but it's not.
It feels like that, but it really wasn't. 2014, what a magic time. So they got together in 1992, started recording and writing together, and made a demo, sent it away. They got signed, and then they recorded this, what is now known as the Blue Album, because the cover's blue, and there's the four band members standing in front of it. And that's a bit of a theme later on. But it's just called Weezer. It's just a self-titled album, but everybody calls it the Blue Album because it's blue. And it did really well. It went quadruple platinum.
So platinum is that 1 million?
Yeah.
Because
gold, it's 1 million. So it's gold. It
goes
100,000, gold, platinum, and then diamond.
Yeah. So 100,000 is gold, right?
Yeah.
I have a friend who has a gold album.
Wow.
And then platinum 1 million, diamond 10 million. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's right. Yeah,
could be.
So
wrong.
Not bad debut album, and it's huge. People absolutely love it, and people are really into it. So they basically they're doing great. They're just taking that around. They're touring it, having a great time, and then after touring, they decide to take a bit of a break, start working on the next album. It's called Pinkerton. And this is kind of like the turning point for this band. Because the thing about Pinkerton is that I think Pinkerton is a good album. A lot of people think Pinkerton is a great album. But when it came out in 1996, all the critics were like, this is the worst album ever made. And I'm guessing it's just like other things. I don't know. Like, I think the production of the album turned a lot of people off because it's a lot darker and a lot more. I don't know how you would describe it. I showed you one of the songs. Mm-hmm. It's just a little bit more haphazard.
Yeah, it's more weird.
It's just a bit more wild, and I think people were kind of like, no, we need to have good, clean, like, you know.
Well, the stuff from the first album you showed me was.
It was pretty clean.
It was clean, but it was also had a little element of weirdness.
Yeah, like they were still like playing.
So they just
playing with things.
Maybe they felt like after the first album's success, they were like, well, we can take more risks because we've already got this name. Let's go right into that weird.
I mean, honestly, I'm kind of glad that they did take the risk because, like I said, Pinkerton's a really good album. The fans really like Pinkerton. Critics hated it, and
good. That usually means you're doing something right. If the critics hate
Rivers Cuomo took that personally, and the band basically went on like a mini hiatus after that. Like, everybody started doing different things. Rivers went back to Harvard. Matt Sharp left the band. Like, all sorts of stuff happened. So they were basically on hiatus from 97 to 2000. Didn't do much. They started gigging again as under a different name called Goat Punishment. And they just did covers. Like Nirvana covers and Oasis covers.
Okay.
And they just did that for a while. before working on the Green album. But there's a funny anecdote from that hiatus time, because Rivers went back to Harvard to study, and he had gone through like a bizarre like leg lengthening like procedure. I think one of his legs was a little shorter than the other one,
right.
so it was like getting it lengthened, and he'd grown out his hair and his beard, and he was walking around Harvard with a walking stick, and there were kids like at Harvard wearing his band's merchandise, and none of them recognized him. And he was just like, just hobbling about Harvard going, this is weird, this is absolutely bizarre. Oh
my God.
I know. So like, after all this kind of nonsense, this is a very abridged history of Weezer, because it is. They've released so many albums. 2001, made their comeback with the Green album. And here's the thing. Critics are like, this is a great album. It sells really well. It also goes platinum. But the fans are like, what is this?
Okay.
This is
So
terrible.
who's buying it?
Well, that's the thing.
General public.
I think the general public is buying it, but like the people who got into Weezer before,
Okay.
just not into it.
Okay.
They alienated a whole bunch of their fan base. Basically, the thing about the Green album is that if you are listening to it as a critic, it's not a bad album. It's not a good album, I don't think. It's not a bad album. It's just an eh.
But you got to ask as well, like with critics, like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Where do they come from? They're usually academics, which means the opposite in music. If you're academic, it means that you failed in some regard.
Or they're people that know absolutely nothing about music.
Or people who don't know anything. Yeah. So you're going to get folk that are maybe bitter. You're going to get folk that tried to do it themselves and failed and take it upon themselves to judge others. It's like, what position, what gives you the right or knowledge to judge something on its, not all of them are like that, but it's, people get hung up on like, oh, the critics say this. I said a couple of weeks ago or last week or something, that you always look at the audience, judge what they are saying. So if a thing tends to be bad, the first group to tell you is the audience, the consumers. So like if you go on Tomato Meter, Rotten Tomatoes, look at the audience score.
And then look at the critic score.
I don't even look at the critic score.
I like to balance them out.
The only reason I look at the critic score is just for a laugh.
Yeah.
It's like the Last Jedi has got like 96% reviews on the critic score and like 18 on the audience score or whatever it is. It's so low.
Yeah.
I went on and looked at. Have you seen that? Do you have Amazon Prime?
No, I don't.
Right. If anyone who has Amazon Prime, highly recommend Clarkson's Farm.
Right.
Honestly, some of the best bit of television I've seen in the last decade. And I went on Rotten Tomatoes and it's got a 100% audience score. 100%.
Like people
I've
just
never
really
seen... Lord of the Rings isn't even 100%.
Wow.
It's like, I haven't seen a single negative review for this thing.
What do the critics say?
The critics absolutely love it as well, incidentally.
Oh, right.
So there'll be the odd vegan out there. I'll be like, no, farming bad. But like overall, like it's been so positive. But in that case, like sometimes the critics and the audience line up. A lot of the time they do. Like some maybe older films or something they do. But like whenever there's something like this, like Weezer, where there's a core audience that are really into it, and then they have been delivering to that audience, and then suddenly they draw a big circle around it and start including other things by being more generic, and that pisses off the original core. Then you start to get this mismatch between audience score and critic score kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just quite interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So basically, if you want, like, I've like from the Green album onwards, it's kind of like a steady decline. Like the music starts getting more generic, frankly, and boring in my opinion. It's not Weezer really.
Right.
It's just it's got the same name, but it doesn't feel like the same product.
So
And
what's the lineup change between that and the original? Is there like a creative difference, like from people leaving, or
No, because it's like
Same
3
songwriters?
out of 4 original members. Like they just got this other bass player, Scott Schreiner, who's like a fine bass player.
Was he
Like,
was he a writer?
I don't think he's a writer. I think it's Brian Bell and Rivers that do most of the writing. Mostly Rivers that does the writing.
It's because like Mike Portnoy, the drummer from Dream Theater, left, and he was Dream Theater. He is basically he was the guy. The creative direction in the band was by him, and when he left, it died.
Actually, here's an interesting thing that I totally left out. Matt Sharp was like the de facto manager for most of the band's
Okay.
most of the band's history until he left. Basically, until he left.
Okay.
Which kind of tells you a lot already. So, yeah, basically, Green Album onwards. I mean, to be fair to them, I listened to their latest release called OK Human, which is like a play on OK Computer by Radiohead. And it's not a rock album. It's more like an orchestral pop kind of album. But it's good. I actually enjoyed it. And I think the reason I enjoyed it was because it was the music was interesting. The lyrics spoke to me. I felt an actual human connection with the music this time, rather than just letting it sort of wash over me kind of thing. I was like, it caused me to engage.
It grabbed you.
It actually grabbed me this time, and it's gotten okay reviews. It's like 7 out of 10.
Right. What's the audience saying?
I think audience reception is pretty good on it. I mean, like, as somebody who likes Weezer, as a Weezer fan, I think it's a pretty good album. I enjoy it. I think it's good fun. I'll play a little bit after the end of the episode, so you can kind of hear what I'm kind of talking about. But yeah, one of the things that I was really scared of, I think a lot of people are scared of when they talk about this. I don't know if you felt like this when you were doing the Dream Theater episode, but I was scared of being like a sort of a Glory Days kind of like dude, like, oh, they were so much better back then. Like everything was much better when I was like 17. Like you don't want to ever fall into that trap. But in this case, it's kind of. I mean,
I see what you mean. With Dream Theater is weird because they
were kind of forced.
They were forced to make big decisions and they changed everything. But the way it works now, which is quite bizarre, there's obviously Dream Theater's changed since 2010 because the sort of founding member left the band, and the creative changes that happened in the band were massive. But now, you would think, given the Weezer sort of structure, that there's a core fan base that like the original Weezer. The core fan base of Dream Theater like the old Dream Theater, but they also like the new Dream Theater, which is bizarre.
Right.
Because there is a core fan base that actually like the new stuff.
Right. Well, I feel like I'm in the sort of the core fan base that likes the old stuff, and I'm more or less ambivalent to everything else, except this one new album that they've released.
Right.
I'm like, this is okay. But that's kind of basically when you do make a big shift like that, and when you start trying to, because I feel like, without being a dick about it, like, I think from the Green album onwards, they were just chasing the platinum, like, you know, he got a whiff of it after, you know, Rivers got a whiff of it after like one failed album, which I think is really, really good. Failed. Like, people now, like, sort of like in hindsight are like, oh, actually it is a pretty good, like everything, you know.
Like, oh, the prequels were actually quite good, you know, the Star Wars prequels. Everyone at the time was like, that's terrible, but now everyone's like, actually, they were really good.
2 still sucks.
2 will always suck, but it's still better than 7, 8, and 9, in my opinion.
And my favorite one is 3. Anyway, that's beside the point. I like 1 for the lightsaber duels.
1 was the first Star Wars film I ever saw.
Right.
So it will always be
a
special movie for me.
Empire Strikes Back was the first one I ever saw.
Nice.
Like the old ones. Yeah.
Nice.
But there you go. Anyway, where was I? If you want to, if you're interested in looking at this further, there's a really good video, which a lot of this information is kind of based on, by a guy called Pat Finnerty, who's doing. He's got a YouTube series called "What Makes This Song Stink," which is like antithesis of "What Makes This Song Great" by Rick Beato.
Okay.
Yeah, and he talks about Weezer in detail. It's very comedic. It's good fun. I highly enjoy it. Highly recommend it. I highly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. And I mean, if it hasn't been recommended on your YouTube by now, then you might never find. Oh, I mean, like, that's how I found it. It was just YouTube was like, "Here, have this," and it's just blown up. But yeah, when you decide to sort of please the critics, I guess, you end up at risk of losing people like me.
Yeah.
Like the core fans.
Yep.
The
people you're supposed to be serving.
Now, the thing is that, I mean, they've made loads of money off of the Blue album, right? Because it's like people are still listening to it because it's a bit of a masterpiece. Like, it's fantastic. But you know, and at the end of the day, they're still making money. They've still got fans that they can sell their all their music to, and I'm sure there is. And I feel like there's basically, Weezer's got like 2 fan bases, like the ones that like really like the old stuff and are like Green album onwards, you know, into like the Black album and the Red album and the Teal album. They're like, what even is this? And then there's the other fan base that, actually there's 3 fan bases, because there's the fan base that then listen to the Green album and are like, Weezer, Green album onwards, and then probably listen to the old stuff and they're like, oh, that's pretty good too, but I like all of it. And then there's people like my friend John, who listened to Beverly Hills, which is from the Black album first, and then listened to the Blue album, was like, okay, this is Weezer. The stuff that I listened to first is awful.
Okay.
It is not good compared to this. So it's a weird, divided fan base.
Yeah.
That this band has.
That's good though. It's better to create
conversation, I guess.
It's better to create music that people either love or hate.
Yeah.
Rather than just be like, eh.
I feel like the way things are going, was certainly with our latest release, like the music's starting to become a bit more Weezer-ish, as in like it has, you know, it's humanity without sounding without sounding terrible, but like it has like, it just has that thing. It has that thing that made me go, yes, I like this. This good. You know, this is what I fell in love with to begin with. You know, or it has some semblance of that. And I feel like it might be going that way. But yeah, like basically for people listening out there, I don't think chasing the money is a good idea. I don't think it. I mean, it worked out for them because
was it you that was saying this a couple of weeks back that some YouTuber or somebody did an experiment where there was some data set or something saying that the most successful pop songs of all time have a verse length of this length and a chorus length of this length, and use these chords and these amount of notes in this order more often than others. And what they did is they basically used this data set to create a average of all best pop tunes. This data.
Oh no! This is like there was 2 experiments that was like where they basically asked the general public in America what they like. They did this with an artwork and they did this with a piece of music. I think this is what I'm maybe talking about.
It was you who told me about this.
I think it was you. I think I told you about this. So there was they did an experiment with the general public and they said to them basically, what do you like in a painting for the first one? And then like, what do you not like? And they made the world's most wanted painting, which is like some generic like American landscape painting with like deer, and I think George Washington is there. And it's just like, it's that kind of thing. And then the world's least wanted painting was some like abstract, like cubist, brutalist kind of looking thing. And they did the same thing with music, where they asked the general public what they liked most in a song and what they liked least. And then the world's most wanted song is like a 4-minute long crap love song with some saxophone in it at some point. And it's nothing special. And then the least wanted song it's 20 minutes long. It's got bagpipes in it, dissonance. It's got an opera singer rapping in it, and cowboy music.
All in one.
Like for 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
It's actually and like random jingles. There's like a jingle for Walmart in there in the middle of the song. And like holiday songs. So there's like a Christmas song, like a generic like Christmas song, and then like an Easter song. Like
okay,
it's.
I'd love to, like do that experiment, like, but make it more like technical. Like take if Spotify had an algorithm that could detect. Would do chord and note and beat detection, so it could tell you like the songs with the most amount of plays, like analyze the top
10
top 100,000 mostly played Spotify tunes, and analyze everything about it, the notes
like
used, BPM, everything, so it could come up with the average amount of notes used and what they are, the average tempo and time signature, the average chords and melodies and male or female vocals, like rap or genre, or like just go through the whole thing, and then from that data, using AI, generate a song from that average, and I bet you it would sound like absolute trash.
Probably would,
because like that's how bureaucracies and committees write music, is they vote on what they think is going to be the best. But usually when a good song's written by usually 1 or 2 people, and they make really radical decisions on like one thing.
Well, I mean, like if you want to experience that like live, like the Eurovision Song Contest, they do it there, right? Because you've got some countries send in like the most generic looking music. You know, like when I watched it, it was this year, yeah, because it was in May this year, because it wasn't put on last year. So May this year, they the way it works now is that the critics, like each country has like a panel of specialists that then like assign points to the songs. You know, 12 points, 10 points, 11, 10, 9, the whole like scoring system. And now they have a popular vote. So you phone in or you text in whose song you liked the most. So it's just the general public from each country, like, just goes, I liked this song. This is a song that I liked. And then they do that at the end. And it's fascinating to see what people actually think compared to what the critics think. Because for ages it was, this year it was Switzerland. And the critics were like, and it was okay. It was like,
but they're all bad. It's like pick the
I don't know,
least
man.
worst.
I mean, there was some good ones. I mean, you don't like listening to music, so
Eurovision's the bar's pretty low. Let's be honest. It hasn't been high since ABBA won it.
I mean, I thought there was a lot of trash this year.
The Gandalf sax came from Eurovision, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Like.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yeah. Amazing. You know that guy got an award from, I think he's from Belarus. Belarus gave him like a national award for basically becoming a meme and like basically generating interest for the country. Because after that tourism, like...
Really?
Yeah.
How would they know that this is the Gandalf sax? Like I had to properly like look into it to find out that it came from Eurovision. I had no idea. Because I was like, what is that, a sax thing? I just see Gandalf doing the... the head bop thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so... Back to the scoring thing. Like, the critics will say one thing is good, and then the audience will just come out and be like, actually, it was this really weird tune that actually had no points, or like the critics basically ignored. And then it will just suddenly skyrocket all the way to the top.
Yeah.
I can't remember who won, which is bad.
Yeah. But not the person who actually won.
No, I can't remember who, like which country won it this year. Oh, well, it doesn't matter.
But you remember the audience score, but not the
I just remember the audience scoring was just wild. It was like all over the place. Like there'll be like that's what I'm saying. Like there'll be like one country who's like 8th, and then all of a sudden they'll just jump up to like first place out of nowhere. Because people really liked it. Yeah. It's kind of exciting, actually.
It's funny, I was listening to a podcast kind of based on this whole thing. We always talk about how you should leave the creation to your own individual thing rather than appealing to an audience. And an example of that was given with regards to way back in the early 1900s when Henry Ford was building the car. So the argument was like Henry Ford saw the problem in America was that people were all using horses and carriages and stuff, and the motor car was coming in and it was far too expensive. The only people who could buy one was like gentry, really, really rich people. So he thought, I need to figure out a way to mass manufacture a car so that I can pump them out faster than any other country and then justify charging less to increase more sales. And then, so basically he was selling a system. He wasn't selling a car, he was selling a fast system. But if you had polled or asked the American public back then, what would you like improved about your transport. They would say things like, "Oh, I want a faster horse, or a horse that can pull more weight, or a cart that has better oiled wheels," or something. They didn't see the big picture. Whereas he didn't ask his audience. He just thought with his own ingenuity, like, I can see something that will, they couldn't even imagine what the solution to their problem was. And had he just bowed down to what his interpretation of what people think, if he had just gone, the audience want this, we wouldn't have ended up with a car.
Or like, this is what sells, so I'm going to keep,
Yeah, this is what
Ford
sells.
could have, if he like was just listening to what people wanted, he would just become a horse breeder.
Yes, exactly. Where he wouldn't have been a car salesman or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same with like Elon Musk and people like that. They don't listen to. They follow their passion. They don't just go like, oh, it's like he was like one of the PayPal guys. He started PayPal.
Yeah.
At the time when PayPal came into being, what? I'm going to trade money online? That's insane. Like, why? That's so insecure and all this. Like, if he had asked, like, oh, I'm going to start this business where you can make transactions online, so it's not done like by check or by cash or by card. It's going to be done with electronic payments over the internet. People freaked out, and if he had listened to that, he wouldn't have made PayPal. And obviously, when PayPal caught on and people learned that it was secure, then it became the norm. And now it's so norm. It's like, what? PayPal? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But at the time, that was a big deal. I remember when PayPal started. I was still in school, and the first time I heard that someone was like paying for stuff online, I was like, is that safe? Will they not like steal all your money and stuff? Like, it was such a radical thing. And if you don't try a thing, you'll never know. And it's the same with any creative endeavor. You have to be a little bit creative and just kind of put aside what you think people want and just pursue what you think, what you want, what your creative vision, and you'll generate something that's genuinely unique. And if it's not, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Like, sometimes you stay true to your artistic vision and all that, and you release something and nobody likes it. It's like, well, that's okay as well. Like, there's plenty of people who stay true to their artistic vision and release stuff and no one listens to it. It could be a marketing problem.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in bands where we've sat and we've gone, oh, we need to make sure we do this because otherwise people will get annoyed with us or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking more specifically with Eriska, like very, very early on.
Yeah.
I felt like for ages we were like, we need to make sure we're playing this like this and this like that, and we don't play it like this because otherwise people are going to go, oh, this is bad.
Or they're going to make fun of us.
Or they're going to make fun of us or whatever.
And then there was the whole, like, oh, we should get a vocalist.
Because everyone's saying we should get one.
Yep.
And then I can't remember what happened. Basically, we just started writing our own tunes. We stopped playing traditional stuff and we started writing our own stuff. And then all of a sudden people were like, oh, this is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The complete opposite to what we thought.
Yeah, the complete opposite to what we thought. Like, I'm thinking about the two most recent tunes that I've written. They are not trad tunes.
Not at all.
Not in the slightest. You can't categorize them in anything. And even like some of the tunes that Alien has written,
mm-hmm.
like they're not really trad tunes. Although the most recent ones, like I guess, are inspired, but like,
You're not. Well, we're not thinking about.
We're not thinking about it like that anymore. It's just we're a band. We have these instruments.
Yeah. The thing that makes it us is it's genuinely original, and the people forget, like, A band's sound comes from the collaboration between the musicians in that band, and the band's sound changes when you drop certain musicians. It's no longer the same band. It's like if you put an idea through a mechanism like a band. You can take a song, a composition. George Harrison made this point once, where you could take any song, and by a song I mean melody, lyrics, chords. You can have it portrayed however you want. So you just the nugget, the DNA, right? Give it to one band in one genre, another band in another genre. You could do it to 10 different bands and not allow them to communicate with each other at all. So you have 10 bands with one song, all arranging and performing and rehearsing this one song. And you hear the end result, you'll have 10 songs. It's all the same song. So you're not allowed to change the lyrics or the melody, but you can play around with the chords. I'd love to run that experiment. And because that's where the uniqueness comes from. It's not necessarily the song, the original song. It's what you do with it is what makes it that band. If you took a Madonna song, right, and stripped it right back to lyrics and melody and gave it to Weezer, Weezer would make it sound like Weezer because they're Weezer. And if you gave it to Eriska, we would make it sound like Eriska. A song is just a little nugget of information, and it's what you do with it and how you arrange it and how you plan it, and that's what makes a band. And you do that through bouncing around musical ideas in a rehearsal space with other human beings. And obviously, if you're a 6-piece and you lose 4 of those members and replace them with new members, you get a different sound because they're different people. I remember a mistake I made. Well, not me, but my band made a mistake. I was in a 7-piece band like nearly 10 years ago. And we were writing and recording, and we had a sound, and then the band kind of split. 3 or 4 members left, and we replaced them. And we were constantly trying to get the sound we had with those other members, but we can't do that because they're not the same people. So we were bouncing around ideas, expecting the same results. And when we weren't getting those results, we were really hammering, no, it needs to be more like this. No, you'll be shouting at the bassist. No, something more like this kind of bass line. And you can't force that.
No, totally.
It's a new lineup, and it's going to change. Which is why I'm so against managers and labels dictating how they think the music should be, because you can't. It's so unnatural to force a band to work differently like that. It's like telling people who are having a conversation, oh, you can have a conversation freely, but you're not allowed to use the letter E. You're significantly what's the word? You're significantly handicapping everyone's ability to speak if you reduce their vocabulary. And that's the same as a manager coming in and going, it should be more like this. You're saying, well, all these options that we used to have, they're gone now. We can't jam this like this because that's not what they want. So you're changing your behavior in order to get something that's been put across arbitrarily by some manager saying, oh, we're chasing that platinum, we're chasing that platinum disc, and this is what we think will get us a platinum disc in the current situation with the charts at the moment. Like, everyone's getting platinums with this kind of style. You need to write like that. So you're basically taking all of these ideas off the table. Right? You can't jam that. You can't jam it like that because that won't sell. And it's bloody damaging to.
I feel like everything. It's more of a, maybe this is an episode for another time, but I feel like, well, not really, but I feel like that's more of a more recent problem. I kind of like, I'm thinking of like the Beatles. And the thing is that at the beginning, like the kind of music they were just writing that because that's what they were writing. That's the kind of tunes that they were writing, and then they were just sort of, I feel like, allowed to sort of naturally evolve, and that's how you end up with all that really crazy stuff towards the end of their
It wasn't
career.
like that in the beginning.
I know, it wasn't like that. And
because for the first time they got to the studio, George Martin said, I heard you guys play, you're really good, and I've got this song for you. I wrote this song called How Do You Do? Do you know the song?
No.
How do you do what you do to me?
Never heard it.
It's a very, very famous song from the 60s that ended up being recorded by, I think it was Jerry and the Pacemakers. So they made the Beatles. That was the Beatles' first song. They never released it though. So John was like, yeah, I guess we can play that. Yeah, sure. I think it was George Martin who like co-wrote it, and they played it. And George Martin says like, what do you think? And he's like, well, it's not really us. I mean, we have songs. We have our own songs. It's a bit twee. And he was like, all right, okay. So, all right, well, what have you got? And then John's like, all right, boys. She Loves You. Like, they just come right in with She Loves You. And then, like, George Martin and all the engineers are just, like, mouth open, like,
it's a great song.
Oh, okay. Now, forget the How Do You Do. I'll give that to someone else.
Like, that chord progression is just great. The chord progression for that whole song is just brilliant.
So the original was like, here are songs that you're going to play to get started. And then they were big enough and mature enough to go, actually, no, the stuff they're giving is actually really good. Let's just let them be them. And the Beatles kind of were. They were never dictated to like
No.
what
But
to
a lot
write.
of the bands in like that kind of period were kind of just allowed to do what they wanted to do, and then more recent, and they were just allowed to do that.
Could have been as well because the label they were signed to was Parlophone, which was a subsidiary of EMI. Parlophone was kind of like a joke label. Before the Beatles, Parlophone would record like voiceovers and like what's his face, the Australian pedo guy artist. What's his name?
Rolf Harris.
Right? Right. The last thing, I think it was one of the last things George Martin did before he met the Beatles was Rolf Harris vinyl comedy children's thing or something. Right. He was recording sound effects and like radio drama stuff, and like it was just a joke label. It wasn't serious. It wasn't like proper music.
It was like let's give other stuff to Parlophone.
And there was this like amateur band from like Liverpool. Oh, it's up north. It's fine. It's not from London. Who cares? And brought them down, and they accidentally broke the world on a Diddy label. Parlophone were just nobodies. They were just like they were just. It wasn't really a big deal.
Wow.
So maybe they got that freedom because, well, they weren't really doing anything anyway. So it's kind of weird how it all worked out. And then everybody wanted to go to Parlophone. Everybody. You know, Cliff Richard, Cilla Black, and like endless. Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd. They were all going to EMI Studios, or now known as Abbey Road Studios. It wasn't called Abbey Road back then. So, like, because they were allowed to do what they wanted to do, there was no, like, top-down, like, you must do this, you must write like this. So, like, what, with regards to Weezer, like, what do you know, is there a story behind, like, why they changed their sound so drastically?
No, I think...
Is it a top-down thing, or was it, like, internal?
I think it was just because after the sort of, after Pinkerton bombed, basically... I think people are sort of theorizing that basically Rivers was just he went into like a deep depression after that while he was at Harvard, and he had his leg thing and he was walking around with a walking stick and all that stuff.
Pinkerton's the one that did really well, but the critics hated it.
The critics hated it, but the fans like it.
All right.
But yeah, And then that's when they took the big hiatus, and I think, and then they did this comeback album, which the critics were like, yes, and the fans were like, we waited 5 years for this.
Okay.
1996 till 2001, absolutely no Weezer, and then that's what it came back with, and it was just a little bit. But the critics were like, "This is good. This is really good," and Rivers was like, "Okay, well, keep doing more stuff like that."
So what about now?
Well, now, after the Green Album and all that stuff, they like a bunch of albums that they released kind of got like lukewarm reviews, and I feel like now, their music is starting, personally, from what I've listened to, of OK Human anyway. I haven't listened to Van Weezer yet, but OK Human was good. Genuinely, I think it's. I kind of got excited when they released it, and I listened to it, and I was like, "Oh, dude, this is actually good." I actually enjoyed that. It didn't sound like early Weezer because there's like an orchestra and like there's like really intricate string parts and stuff, but like the lyrics grabbed me, the music generally grabbed me, and I was like, "Okay."
More on the right track. Yeah, it's funny. Maybe there was like maybe one of them had a
but then
like an obsession with chasing critics or something.
And then there's also the thing of like Matt Sharp leaving the band, and I think he added a certain energy to the band, and then after he left,
you see this in the Scottish folk scene. For some bizarre reason, they seem to be obsessed with critics and awards and what do you call it? Like highly acclaimed folk rock band. It's like,
who cares?
it's kind of like, oh, they've won the award for best musician in 2021. They've won like the drummer won best drummer of like they have all these like awards and things to their name. I see that, like I go on some websites, band websites, and the first thing they tell you is like, folk band of the year 2016.
Who cares?
Blah 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 blah. Written all. I'm like, yeah, and is that supposed to make me like your music? Like, if your music's good, I'll like it. If it's not good, I don't care. Put them. Why are you? I don't understand what's the purpose in that? Is that like, I always thought it was like, oh, maybe venues or festivals are like looking for certain things, like award-winning band.
It's that there's a certain element of that.
So, like, is it the same with Weezer in regards to like, oh, the critics scores high, therefore we're going to book them for Glastonbury, or like I always thought it was like sales.
Yeah, it's sales. Like at the end of the day, like they did get like critics like it, and it did sell. Like their albums do sell, but it's who are they selling to? You know what I mean?
It's like, what are critics for? Critics are for like a restaurant critic comes in, right? They do a critique, and then they put an article on a newspaper or a blog or something, and then that tells people what kind of food you're expecting at a restaurant. And then you've got the audience score kind of thing, so that's like Google ratings or Yelp or whatever, or Yellow Pages. Or
a good example of this actually is, but keep going.
No, like that's from what I see, that is the purpose of critics, is that it's professional in air quotes, professional critiquers telling other professionals like venues and festivals, look, they're in our club, you can hire these people. These are safe. This is a safe bet. You probably get your money back if you invest in these folks.
Yeah.
It's not going to be too polarizing. There's not going to be a bunch of fans turning up that are going to be hating on this, like, oh, some controversial band's coming to this festival, and everyone's going to be like, boo, and that's going to be bad for us because we'll get bad press. Is there something like that in it?
I think there could be some element of that in it as well. You know, it's kind of going back to what you were talking about people putting how many awards they've won. You know,
Yeah, what's the point in that?
I think it's just they really want to sell so hard how good they are before people, like, which again then tells me
show don't tell. That's my motto. Show don't tell.
Yeah,
show us a video. Show us the music.
Yeah, they can, like, yeah, exactly. I here's the thing. I 100% agree with you on that. Like, I've been to. Here's a good example. Paisano's is a pizza restaurant chain in Scotland. I don't know if they have any shops down in England, but everybody tells me that Paisano is good.
Yeah.
I have been to Paisano multiple times. It's okay. It's
last time I went, it was actually excellent.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
So it depends. Maybe.
Yeah. I've been like 5 times, and I would say 3 out of 5 times I've been disappointed. But there was 2 times. The last time I went, I was like, oh, this is good.
But you'll find that there's a lot of places like that in Glasgow. Like, you know, you'll hear critics talk about, like, oh, the new Gordon Ramsay restaurant that's opened up is incredible because it's got Gordon Ramsay's name on it. And then you actually go and it's like, really? Like, I've heard a lot of stuff like that from, like, Jamie Oliver restaurants that he's opened up. And, like, you know, people are like, oh, yes, it's amazing food. And then it's like a regular Joe, like, comes in and goes, what is this? Like, this isn't food. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. So it's kind of like, it's like professional signaling, if you want to call it that. So, like, look here, it's got all the signals of being a professional establishment. So it gets your foot in the door with all the big names. But at the end of the day, it's not the big names that are buying the product. It's the wee people. It's the audience.
Yeah.
And if it's bad, it doesn't matter how many professionals you convince. The audience is still not going to buy it if it's crap.
You know, it's like you see it with video games now. Actually, you know, there's like studios like Ubisoft, for example, that are like. You know, making these games, and then critics are like, oh yes, it's a 9 out of 10, and then everybody that picks it up is like, this is buggy, this looks horrible, I hate it, get out of my face.
Assassin's Creed,
man.
Yeah. I saw the reviews for it would have been Odyssey.
Oh, Odyssey.
And I was like, okay. And I kind of like Origins. It was all right. So
Origins was fun.
I got it, and within the first 10 minutes, I was like, "This is trash. This is just oversaturated trash." And it's basically just the same game as it has been for the last 5, 6, 7 years. They've just churned it right out, and yet the critic scores are like really good, really high, and it's like the whole game is just so. It just feels so. As wide as an ocean and as deep as a puddle, as they say. Mm-hmm. So much scope, but no substance. And another game that was kind of like that, where the critics were panning it awful when it came out, saying it was a dreadful game. And
No Man's Sky?
No.
It was pretty terrible when it first came out.
That was terrible. And then they've redeemed themselves significantly. But Days Gone came out on the PlayStation Plus monthly game thing, and I was going to get it, but the negative reviews were putting me off, so I was like, I'm not going to bother. because the trailer looked really good, and I was like, I'm going to get that. And then I heard all these negative things, like saying, "Oh, it's not what they promised," and all this. And I was like, "Oh, I'll not bother." But then it came out for free, and I was like, "Oh, I'll download it and play it, see what it's like." Honestly, it's brilliant. It's an amazing game. I was so taken aback. I was like, I don't know what they were complaining about. Like, this is an amazing game. And then you look at the audience score and it's really high, and the critics are quite low. And it's like, why? Like, I don't get it. It's good. It's actually a good game. It's like maybe there's some corrupt thing that happened behind the scenes that people are like, oh no. It's like, you know, in the music scene, if you don't know certain people and you're not friends with certain people in the industry, then the rumors get round, and then you suddenly find you're not getting booked. So I know of bands this has happened to, where they fall out of favor with one person, and then they tell all their pals, and then the next minute you can't get anywhere. It's like a little clique. Maybe like it's the same in that industry. Is like, if you don't get a good review with this magazine, then that severely hurts your sales, because, well, like, I could have bought that game earlier, but I didn't. And I would have, had I known that it was all lies, like it was a good game. It's weird. Yeah.
I think more recently as well, like The Last of Us 2.
That's a good example.
Yeah, I think the critics were like really into it. And
really loved it, yeah.
The fans played it and they were like, we hate this.
I've mixed feelings about that game. I like the game as a standalone game. Gameplay, like, if I had never played the first game as a standalone game, it's a good game. The gameplay is good. The story's good. It goes way up and down. It's topsy-turvy. But when you put it next to when you take into the fact that it's a sequel, it's very disappointing, story-wise, for me. It's, a lot of undermining, a lot of, like, just
it's the same
weird
thing.
Story things.
Like, that game still sold like crazy, you know, but that's the thing. Like, I think it sold, the Green Album sold really well because people were like, Weezer, yeah,
Okay.
it's come back.
Hype train. Yeah, okay. So, like, Fallout 4. Fallout 4 was like the biggest
Fallout 76, mate.
Was like, Fallout 76 was, that's not the same, because people checked out of that game. It was like, within the first 2 days, people knew that this was a massive scam, and they just were, I'm out. But Fallout 4 was like, this is great. Is it great? Is this great? It's okay. Yeah, this is okay. And that was kind of how it stayed. It was like, yeah, great. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, good. And we weren't expecting that, because it was like hype. You know, it was like Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and we were expecting this big pfft, and a lot of what was expected didn't happen. And the critics were like, yeah, this is great, so it must be great. And everyone was just kind of like, it was like 6s and 7s out of 10s across the board. It was like, yeah, it's good, but wait for the sale. Don't buy it release.
Don't buy it new.
And yeah, I guess it's kind of the same with.
It was the same with Ghost of Tsushima. It was another one. That was a game I was really hyped for, and then it came out, and the critics were like, "It's all right." And I played it, and I was just like, "What are you talking about? This is incredible. This is a really, really good, faithful representation of like medieval Japan. Like, this is good.
Right.
What are you talking about?" Happens all the time. Anyway, so I hope people listening out there got something out of that. Basically, the fable, the meaning of it is, don't put a lot of stock in what critics have to say. See how people react to it. Like, don't try and like. I feel like the most dangerous thing you can do as a band is try to meet someone's expectations, because then you're not you're not doing anything interesting, really. You know?
Yeah. There's this weird relationship between a band and its fans, audience, and a band and the professional reviewee side. Because I haven't really thought about that until now. Like, I have thought about it, but I haven't really articulated it. Like, so there's like two relationships, like your music to your fans and your music to the people you want to hire you to play in their venue so you can get to your fans. The professional people, the future tour booking agencies, production, managers, labels, those people you've got to convince to try and get you on that bandwagon, pun intended. So like that, like we always say, like, don't write music for an audience. Also, don't write music for professional people to try and get hired, to try and get, on their label. Don't change your artistic vision so that you can impress some gatekeeper. And don't write music that you think your fans will like. Write music that you like, and you'll find fans that like that too, if you like it. And find the right people. Like, if you're in the process of getting signed right now, and you're sending music off to different labels, and you get calls back from labels saying, "Oh, we really like your stuff, but can you make it a little bit more country, or a little bit more of this, or a little bit more of that?" That's when you close that email thread and just move on to the other person. Like that email we read out.
Yes.
10 or so episodes ago of,
"Hi, we like your music. Just change it all, please."
Yeah. So that was an example of a gatekeeper asking to, like, yes, I will consider your thing, but I want to have a hand in your creative vision. No, it's not up to you. The manager has no say in what you create in the studio. No say whatsoever.
Agreed.
Just their job is to figure out how to take your artistic vision and give it to the audience. That's their job. And to make sure that you can do that and keep doing that indefinitely. That's their job as a manager. Is to allow you and to relieve you of all the administrative garbage so that you can just focus on making the music. That's a manager's job. It's not their job to tell you what to play or how to play it. It's to run everything around about you so that you can focus on what to play and how to play it. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Right. So
covered everything. Talked about video games, talked about films, talked about one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you enjoyed that, please give us a review so that we can appeal to all the critics.
Yes.
So, yeah, if you're on Apple, please smash that 5-star review button. And if you're on Spotify listening right now, hit that follow button. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And if you're on Facebook, hit that like button. What else have we got?
If you're on because
Instagram,
it doesn't go on
hit
Instagram.
that heart button on the thumbnail. Yeah, I don't put videos on Instagram.
If you're on Google Podcasts, you can't do anything.
You can't do anything. It's bizarre.
You can subscribe.
In which case, listen to the next episode.
Yes.
Do that. And share with all your musician pals. Greatly
Even people don't know anything about music.
Yeah, listen to these two talk nonsense for an hour every week. Cool. So, any ideas for next week? Because I don't have any.
I'm sure something will come up.
Probably.
I'm away.
You're away
next week.
You're away next week.
Yes.
And
I'm away to a cottage in the woods.
And we've got a gig next week for the first time in 2 years or something. It's our first gig first Eriska gig since September 2019.
I'll need to bring in my. I've got a bunch of stuff arriving, but I'll bring in my my keyboard I've got an iPad, so I've got a nice synth based setup with an iPad and a MIDI keyboard. You just take a line out. That's it. Sounds pretty good.
Looking forward to it. Anyway,
just means we can do more stuff. Anyway,
right.
right.
See you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.